My name is Bruce Koff, and I am a lifelong Chicagoan and serve on the All Aboard USA Committee of Rainbow Railroad, which is the only international organization dedicated to rescuing LGBTQI individuals facing state-sponsored or enabled persecution and bringing them to safety. I am also the gay grandson of 4 Jewish immigrants who fled persecution in their own time and flourished in this country. I am the beneficiary of their struggle, and I am here to pay it forward. Last week, Windy City Times published an essay that I wrote comparing the early years of AIDS in America to the worldwide scourge now of anti-LGBTQI persecution. It is an epidemic, and the tragedy and losses are mounting. So, I welcome you here today because the need is urgent, the conditions are worsening, and refugees and asylum seekers who cannot and dare not speak for themselves desperately need our voice. As we did in the early years of another epidemic, we gather here now to mobilize and to save lives. So I invite you here to engage with our expert panelists who are charged with helping us to understand the daunting and dangerous journey of our worldwide LGBTQI family, thousands of whom are forced to leave all they know and love in order to live. I also invite you to consider what more you can do to help make this country a welcoming place for them. So to begin our journey, I'm honored to introduce a friend to our community who has steadfastly stood with us and now stands with LGBTQI refugees and asylum seekers. Congressman Mike Quigley was elected to Congress to represent Illinois' 5th District in 2009. A former Cook County Commissioner who began his career through community service and environmental stewardship in the Lakeview neighborhood, Mike has served the community for more than 30 years. Among his positions in Congress, Mike is vice chair of the LGBT Equality Caucus. He also strongly supports, in both word and action, immigration reform to give families seeking safety and opportunity the dignity that they deserve. It is therefore my honor to introduce Congressman Mike Quigley.
Thank you. First, thank you for having me here tonight. It's an honor and a pleasure to be back. I am reminded that this room brings back memories of the good old days. My first term, we announced my first earmark in this room was $500,000 to the Center on Halstead. May those days return, folks. First, I want to thank everybody in this room for doing what you do, right? I'm often asked, what can I do? You're doing it. It's the everyday fight in the trenches that has to continue, right? Whether it's Mike every day in the legal trenches or all of you in these organizations that battle every day. And each one of those battles is extraordinarily important in the overall victory. You save one person, you save the world. My staff's so good. Yoni's here. Thanks, Yoni. Hey. Marianne and Chris also from my office, but thanks for their service. And they're always so good. They give me talking points. And, you know, we were able to get money for the Immigration Help Desk successfully. We introduced the Immigrant Detainee Legal Rights Act. We successfully fought in a number of fights on the on the Appropriations Committee to battle the issues with the detention facilities and ICE and so forth. But let me put it in the larger context. Stepping in from DC, folks. I've been on the House Select Committee for almost 4 years and part of the Russian investigation. You may have heard of this for a year and a half now. For those of us who remember, the Cold War was about communism versus capitalism. At least I suppose that's how we thought about it. Folks, now it's sort of democracy and democratic ideals versus autocracy. And I'm not sure which side our president is on. That makes every issue extraordinarily difficult. When we talk about limiting numbers of detainees, limiting numbers of refugees at a time of the greatest refugee crisis in American history, when we build walls, when we ban Muslims, when we tear families apart, you know what I hear in the community? That's not who we are. Let me tell you something. Two things. If things don't change in November, that's who we are. Number two, right now, to the rest of the world, that's who we are. This is a battle for our country's soul. And I could be talking to you about any number of issues, and this one's near and dear to me. But you must think in the most practical terms possible, right? Keep me informed as you do on individual actions we can take, because every day's battle, as I began with, is absolutely critical. The fights that we address on the Appropriations Committee, the fights on the Intel Committee, and all that we do in Congress are absolutely critical. We can't be a government in exile for 2.5 more years. There's too much at stake. We have to have these victories, and you're moving and keeping us advised and supporting it and getting other people engaged matters. But the real fact of this is most policy problems have political solutions. So among the things you walk out of here tonight reminding yourselves is, in my world, the only thing that's going to matter is 218. Because I'm not a ranking dim, I'm a chairman, right? And the chairman of the Judiciary Committee becomes Mr. Nadler. The chairman of the Oversight Committee becomes Mr. Cummings. And the chairman of the Intel Committee becomes my friend Adam Schiff. Then we find out what the hell happens, and we can bring people to justice, and we can deal with justice and the issues that you care about firsthand. So I asked you to consider that as we move forward and appreciate that fact. Be there. The last time I saw President Obama at the White House was the holiday party in December of 2016. And I said, we miss you already. And he said, it's going to be okay. And I said, no, it's not. I think we were both right. This is as important an issue as there is when it comes to who we are as a country and the aspect of, is it all right? Because it's not all right now, and it's going to get worse. Let me tell you something. If we don't win back the House in 2018, it's not just that we can't stop them from doing horrible things like they are on any number of issues. I promise you they will be emboldened. They will see this as an extraordinary acknowledgement in their minds that what they've been doing, tearing families apart, letting people die in countries across the world, right? Attacking, think about this. They're attacking what makes America America. So they will be emboldened. And they'll continue, especially because of the Senate, to put really bad people on the bench that'll hurt us and all the things that you do on an everyday basis. So it's extraordinarily important that on that basis, not only because it will stop us from, it'll make it difficult to stop them, it'll embolden them and they'll take this much further. And be aware that if we win back the House, there's a couple things that's going to happen. This lame duck session, if you can be out of the country for a couple months, that's when you should probably go, because it will be ugly. They will feel like they need to do really all the horrible things they still haven't done, which seems unimaginable when they caucus at Dracula's castle. It's a Simpsons joke. That's when it's going to take place. So when I talk to groups ever since the president became the president, I feel like I'm doing a focus group, right? Or I feel like I'm doing group therapy, right? And my sister, who actually does group therapy, tells me, you know, at the end of the session, people need to feel better. I'm working on that part of it, okay? But the only thing you can't do is give up. I have extraordinary hope. I believe we're going to win the House back. I believe we're going to stop this insanity. We're going to be able to save people all over the world because that's what matters, right? I travel across, I was in the camps. I was in a refugee camp in Jordan, right? I wanted to bring as many kids home as I possibly could. So let's do that together. Let's bring those kids home. Let's make America what America is again. In an odd way, let's make America great again. And with your thoughts, prayers, and efforts, we're going to get that done. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you very much, Congressman. So we'll get on with the panel. I was very fortunate a few months ago to be introduced to Lam Ho. Lam is such an impressive man. He is the executive director of the Community Activism Law Alliance, and he can tell you a lot about that. But it unites lawyers and activists through community-based, community-operated, and community-directed activism law programs for over 4,000 people annually, including undocumented immigrants, sex workers, laborers, and activists. Prior to founding CALA, he was an attorney at Equip for Equality and Skadden Fellow at LAF, where he established 10 community-based legal clinics. Lam graduated from Harvard Law School and holds additional graduate degrees from Brown and Oxford. You know, whatever. He was previously chairperson of the Illinois HIV/AIDS Response Review Panel. He serves on the board of the Community Law Project and the Vietnamese Association of Illinois. And Lam will introduce the rest of the panel and moderate for us. So welcome, Lam.
So if it's okay with everyone, I'm just going to continue sitting like my the panelists. First, I want to just thank everyone for being here today and supporting this event and hopefully supporting the movement that will emerge from it. Based upon what Bruce mentioned, a lot of my work is around activism, and that is based in social movements which are defined by people. And what I hope that everyone will get, and I'm sure you will, because the panel of experts here are all going to move and inspire you, because what we're talking about today captures not only a very under-addressed issue in this country, but they're going to take you globally. This is a global movement that I hope and encourage you to contribute to. In whatever way that you can, support all the LGBTQI refugees and asylum seekers in this country, but also across the world, who are facing persecution and violence that is atrocious and unacceptable to who we are as human beings. And so, as you listen today to these amazing speakers, I hope that you think about that movements is what changes the world. And movements are made with people like you who step up and participate in a fight that needs to be global. So it's with such honor that I'm going to introduce our panelists and let them speak about the amazing work that they've done and share with you their journey. But as the moderator for this event, I also have to do some ground rules. So first, I just want to remind everyone that what we're talking about today is extremely important, but also very sensitive. There may be potential information that is shared that should remain confidential. So please respect the privacy and confidentiality of what might be spoken tonight. If you do hear anything that may be confidential or identifying information, please respect that and not share outside of this room. I hope that everyone here is or will be a supporter to this global movement that I've spoken about. But we can't be sure. There may be people in this room who are law enforcement representatives or those who we don't want access to some of the information that is provided tonight. So please also to panelists, but also to anyone here, keep that in mind should you speak, to keep information that may be confidential or sensitive not public. So, in order to address that situation, we actually ask that everyone who may have a question for our Q&A session to use the note cards that were provided to you when you came in. Write your questions on those note cards and pass them. I think they'll be collected and they'll be passed to me, and I'll moderate those questions. So with that being said, oh, I'm sorry, one final request. So one of our panelists, Gabrielle, sitting at the corner, please do not take any pictures, including Gabrielle. That is something that she's not comfortable with. Okay, so with that being said, I'd like to first start with Eduardo Hernandez. In 2017, Eduardo Hernandez was appointed to lead the first foreign desk of the Canadian-based Rainbow Railroad. In this role, he is championing efforts in the United States to fund a pathway to safety for those who are facing life-threatening violence, persecution, and terroristic harassment simply for being LGBTQI. Honoring the historic legacy of the Underground Railroad, Rainbow Railroad works to provide resources, information, safe transit, and supportive networks to people from all around the world. Eduardo earned a BA in International Relations from Boston University, my hometown. Upon graduation, he was barred from serving in the State Department of the United States because he was openly gay. This led him to focus on being an activist for equality and a resource development professional with special interest in fields including HIV and AIDS, arts, education, and affordable housing. Thanks, Eduardo.
Thank you so much, Lam, and thank you everyone for being here this evening. It's truly an honor to be able to come and talk about the work of Rainbow Railroad. As Lam indicated, I've had a varied career, but my work with Rainbow Railroad, which is just about a year now I've been with them, has been among the most rewarding in my entire career. Rainbow Railroad is an international organization with a very specific mission. We provide emergency travel support to get LGBTQI people in danger to safety. We've been doing this work, as Lam noted, we were founded in Canada, first as a grassroots organization, and achieved charitable status in 2013. In 2015, the organization expanded to open to become a charitable organization in the United States. And now, as I like to say, in the Underground Railroad, it was a network of concerned and compassionate people who worked to bring people who were persecuted to safety. And in that case, it was people from the United States, and safety for many of them was in Canada, where they were beyond the reach of bounty hunters. And today, we now have a Canadian organization that's working to reach ties and build relationships with people like you all across the United States so that we can get people to safety. And it really takes concerned and committed, compassionate people to understand that the crisis and struggle of a refugee is one that is a global crisis, and it's one that affects all of us wherever we're born. It's a part of our humanity to give someone asylum when they're seeking safety, and that is a human right, and that is why we're all here, is to stand up and defend and protect and advance human rights. And I'll look forward to answering specific questions in the panel, but I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for listening, and yeah, thank you.
So while we're exchanging microphones, I would like to introduce you to our next panelist, Michael Jarecki. Michael is the principal of the law office of Michael R. Jarecki, LLC in Chicago, a firm concentrating in U.S. immigration and nationality law. He represents businesses, employees, families, and individuals before government agencies within the country and at U.S. consular posts worldwide. Michael is the immediate past chair of the Chicago chapter of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, AILA, a current member of AILA's National Board of Governors, and a previous chair of the National LGBT Working Group of AILA. Michael has been recognized by Super Lawyers as a rising star in Illinois for immigration since 2012 and one of the best LGBT attorneys under 40. Class of 2012 by the National LGBT Bar Association, an affiliate of the ABA. Michael is a graduate of Loyola University Chicago and the University of Illinois College of Law. So I'll hand it over to Michael.
Okay, technology. All right, thank you very much. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the legal context of what, everyone can hear me in the back? Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about the legal context of what we're talking about when we talk about asylum seekers or refugees and some of the crises that are happening throughout the world in the different countries, which there are over 70 that criminalize homosexuality throughout the world, countries. So there is certainly a crisis for individuals who want to live openly as LGBT individuals, or marry the person of their choosing, or just be themselves and be who they are from a gender identity perspective. So there's a lot that happens with these different diverse countries, but when we're talking about refugees, we're talking about people who are displaced from their country. So they've left their home country, their country of origin, and they're living in a third country. They may not have status in that country, and they get involved with the UN, and eventually they make a claim for refugee status. And if they're so lucky, after many interviews and much vetting, the UN may certify them through a certificate, and then a country has to accept them into their borders. So it's a huge process, and it takes a very long time. And many of these refugees have nothing. They can't gain much because they don't have work authorization or permanent homes. Congressman Quigley spoke of visiting a tent camp in Jordan, which I could imagine that that consists of many displaced Syrians due to the civil war, but that exists around the world. There's a lot of these types of camps. When we're talking about asylum seekers, we're talking about people who actually made it to the borders of the United States. So those are people who travel by plane, and at the airport, they may immediately claim asylum and say that they have a fear of returning to their home country. Those may be people who come to a land border. Those may be people who are in the United States and after a period of time decide to claim asylum. And there's a lot of challenges that asylum seekers face. Those currently who come to the airport, they may find many different ways to come here and many different means, some of which are legal, some of which may not be, because as we know, some of these people are fleeing life-threatening situations. So people may come with false passports. People may come with false visas. People may not even come with documentation. So if those individuals are claiming asylum at the first point of interaction with the US government, they may be detained in a detention facility by the US government for the duration of their case, regardless of whether they have a strong claim or not. So that's how we're welcoming people who are fleeing persecution in this country. We're holding them as people who are a danger to our country when we should be rolling out a red carpet and saying, congratulations, we're so happy you made it to safety. What can we do for you? Yet we put up these barriers and create a lot of legal challenges. Specifically for LGBT asylum applicants, there is a really sort of draconian law that was put in place, I believe in 1996, as the asylum laws became more difficult and more difficult, that said you have to claim asylum within 1 year of arriving to the United States. So that means if you don't claim asylum within that 1 year, you may have a meritorious claim, meaning you may have faced persecution in your home country, or you may have a future fear of persecution in that country, but your asylum claim can be denied just based on this technicality. That doesn't mean automatically that the person will be sent back. and I can talk about that a little bit more. But that means that we're telling the LGBT community, or at least how this law is applied, that you're leaving and fleeing a country where there might be state-sponsored violence against you. It may have included the police and other government authorities. It may have included other people of trust, society, family members. And these people within a 1-year period of time have to then say, oh, I get it. The United States is different. I can trust this government agency. I can trust giving all my personal information, and it's going to be okay. And that all has to happen within 1 year. Also, it's presuming that somebody is able to come out within that 1 year and even accept the truth of who they are. And that's a very difficult thing. I think any of us who identify as part of the LGBTQIA community, add on whichever letter needs to be added on, and sorry if I didn't include all of them. It's a lifelong process potentially, but the asylum laws are telling people that they need to do it within a 1-year period of time. Other challenges that asylum seekers face include just knowing the educational aspect of whether or not that's possible. Again, you're fleeing a country that has basically given the full force of hate and homophobia and violence against you, and all of a sudden you're just supposed to know that this is a safe haven, or learn about that quickly. And unfortunately, as with many things, ignorance of the law does not save you. There are certain exceptions that allow you to file outside of that 1-year filing time frame, but not knowing about asylum law is not one of them, unfortunately. Other challenges that individuals face that I've represented include different psychological, emotional, or mental issues. So it's not an immigration attorney who they need first. It might be a therapist that they need first to work through some of the trauma or the PTSD that these individuals have gone through before they can even articulate their story and sit in front of an asylum officer who that they can tell their story to in the full depth and breadth that their story is. So that is certainly, you know, some of the things that makes asylum challenging. Up until a change in the policy of how asylum applications were decided in January 2018, asylum applicants had to wait 2, 3, and even 4 years in the United States before their asylum application was called for an interview. That means 2, 3, and 4 years of agony, knowing that, is the United States going to accept me and give me refuge, or am I going to have to be sent back to my home country, or am I going to have to find a third country to go to? And not to mention the idea that you always have to keep your traumatic story at the top of your brain, being ready to tell that story. You never get past it. Now in 2018, as of January, asylum interviews are called within a month to 2 months' time from filing. But how that's hurting other applicants who are in the pipeline is everything before that date they've basically put on hold. And that means new applicants are going faster, but those who are in the pipeline are just sort of sitting around. And to give you some context, at least for the asylum office in Chicago, there are currently, as of May 27, 2018, there are currently 21,947 asylum applications pending at the Chicago Asylum Office. And to put in context how harmful the 1-year filing deadline is for individuals who apply for asylum, from a period of October 2017 to May 2018, the asylum office in Chicago referred to immigration court 1,463 claims. Now, this is asylum across the board, not just LGBT asylum. They referred almost 1,500 cases to the immigration court saying, you don't qualify for asylum. Of that number, almost half were referred to immigration court because they didn't file within a 1-year filing deadline time frame. That means those people could have a meritorious claim. It's just that based on this technicality, they are sent on a pipeline to immigration court. If you don't win your case at the asylum office and your case is sent to immigration court, and this is even current for the cases that were filed January 2018, even all the way through the present, if it goes to immigration court, your new wait time is 2 or 3 years to get a final hearing in front of an immigration judge. And then you're greeted with, instead of at the asylum office where it's a conversation with an asylum officer, you're greeted with a full-on court case where you have to tell your story in a court case style where an attorney asks you questions, and the U.S. attorney who wants to deport you is grilling you and asking you questions about, are you really gay, and what is your claim, and how could you prove it, and all of these things. So it's an extremely difficult, long, and arduous process. And many of these people do it without an attorney, and their chances of success really are low because of that. But there are so many good organizations. There are obviously private attorneys. There are so many good organizations like CALA who represent people. We have our colleagues here from the National Immigrant Justice Center who represent people, and they have a specific LGBT asylum project. And these are the resources that are out there, and we need to make sure that anyone who has a claim is put in contact with these individuals, because going it alone is very, very, very difficult and very challenging. I'm happy to keep on going. I want to make sure that other people have a chance to speak. We have a couple more minutes. Okay, a couple more minutes. Fantastic. So I just want to talk about some of the things that occur once you do win asylum. So the people who win asylum get automatically a work authorization card. They get access to benefits that could help them get jobs and housing, medical care. So all of the doors open up to you immediately when you're finally granted asylum. But until that time, people who have a pending case, after 150 days, they can get a work authorization card, but that's it. They don't get any assistance. They have to rely on friends and family, and they sort of have to make it on their own. And it's a very difficult process, and it could be extremely scary. I did want to mention, just so we put that into context, people who are referred to immigration court, it doesn't mean just because their asylum case can't be granted that they're going to be kicked out, and I mentioned that. In immigration court, there are more specific benefits that are open to people that are not available at the asylum office. So if somebody's not eligible for the full asylum approval, they can still get something called cancellation of removal, which means the U.S. government will still put into effect a deportation order or removal order against you, but they won't actually make it active. They won't actually deport you. So that means you get sanctuary or refuge in the United States, but you can only stay within the United States for the rest of your life. If you leave, you self-deport. If you potentially find other routes to move forward, great. The other benefit with asylum is you get to move forward to become a green card holder or a permanent resident. After 5 years, you can become a U.S. citizen. With cancellation of removal and this 1-year filing deadline law, you're stuck at withholding of removal forever. If people don't win at withholding of removal, there's still CAT, which is based on international treaties, Convention Against Torture. But again, that's at the immigration court level. And if a person is there and they don't have an attorney, it's almost impossible that they're going to be able to navigate these very specific nuances within the legal system.
Thanks so much, Mike. So next, I have the honor of introducing Dr. Joanna Thompson, who is a mixed race, half black, half Latina, and queer female. Dr. Joanna Thompson is the Director of Racial Equity and Inclusion here at the Center on Halsted. She recently received her PhD, congratulations.
Thank you.
With the Department of Criminology, Law, and Justice at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Joanna has lived in Chicago since 2010, promoting intersectional community organizing across multiple social identities. Her experiences, both personal and academic, have led her to become a voice for the Chicagoland LGBTQ community on both a grassroots and system-based level. Thanks, Joanna.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, thank you all for being here. This is a really important conversation, and really important conversation that we're having here in this moment at Center on Halsted. So it's great to be a part of this. As was mentioned, in terms of the legal aspect, the rolling out of the red carpet, Center on Halsted is the red carpet. We are that safe space and that safe haven for the community. We offer a variety of resources, from kind of an intersection in terms of what our community looks like and how we operate. But we're unique in this sense in terms of working with folks who are asylum seekers or refugees, because we are really looking at all of those other pieces that may not be taken care of. So for example, our behavioral health department works with folks both in groups and individual settings to provide counseling and therapy for individuals who may need it, who are going through these instances. Our anti-violence project, which directly works with individuals who are suffering from PTSD, who are suffering from trauma, either through this instance or just any other trauma that may have come through their lives. And just again, being a community center and being the largest community center in the Midwest, sometimes you just kind of want to not think about some of those things. And so we provide that space for individuals to just be like everyone else, to have a moment where they can just come here and be happy and be free and navigate the intricacies of coming out as LGBTQI, or maybe just having a lunch downstairs and hanging out and creating community and finding other individuals that they can be as themselves with themselves. I also think one of the other unique pieces that we are able to offer to the asylum-seeking community here is that our staff are directly related to that community in a way. So as was mentioned in my bio, I am half Black, half Latina. My mom is from Nicaragua. And if you're not familiar with the country of Nicaragua, there's a lot of stuff going on in that country currently. So the fact that we as staff are able to talk with the community about these issues in a very direct way and in a way that we directly understand these challenges is really helpful to community members, that they feel a sense of comfort and a sense of safety by interacting with our staff and by not having to describe their story in a way that's re-traumatizing them, but truly is in a way that they can share their experiences that are helping them grow and helping them through this process. And of course, we work with a bunch of other organizations throughout the Chicagoland area, referring them to individuals within the legal sector, within other sectors, since we don't necessarily offer a lot of those resources. But again, just being that safe haven and being that sense of safety is really important for these individuals, especially when they feel as though they can't access that safety in other places, and seeing faces that are going to accept them for who they are in the intersectional identities that they hold is really important. And we have a lot of work to do within this area at Center on Halsted. Obviously, as Director of Racial Equity and Inclusion, it's kind of my task to take that on, and something that as the center grows and as our staff grows and as the work that we do grows, this type of work will be stronger and get better. But the fact, again, that we're having this conversation here in this space is really telling, and I think very powerful about the progress that we're making and that we'll continue to make. And hopefully you all, as we get into the Q&A, will really help us figure out how we can do better, because that's kind of been the underlying theme, as Congressman mentioned in the beginning and what we'll get to afterwards. What can we do to better help this community and really be a community all together in this room? I think we tend to forget that we are also community members, and so how can we really work together to support everyone?
Before we have our last speaker, I just wanted to mention, if you have any questions, could you please start writing them down, and we're going to start collecting them soon. We'll have questions and answers after Gabrielle speak. And so it's with such great honor that I introduce our next speaker. Gabrielle is a transgender female who is currently a grad student here in Chicago studying finance. That's pretty impressive. As someone who studied English literature, anything like finance scares the hell out of me. And I also, this is just such amazing information. In June 2018, just a few months ago, after 5 years, Gabrielle was granted asylum. So, I mean, this really also speaks to what Mike spoke earlier. It took 5 years, and when you hear about Gabrielle's journey, think about having to wait 5 years to get this piece of paper saying we recognize everything that has happened to you. And also, I want to mention also that Gabrielle's dream is to help her community raise awareness and improve the conditions of LGBTQIA people. So, with such great pleasure, I'll hand it over to Gabrielle.
Hello, everybody. I'm a little bit nervous, though. But yeah, well, my journey wasn't easy. As Michael mentioned, like the 1 year rule was really difficult for me because I was coming from a country where the authorities didn't really respect who I was. At the time, I didn't identify as a transgender woman. I didn't know I was transgender, so it wasn't something I found out within a year that I got here. So one of the things that made me move here was how authorities in my country treat me. From starting from like the law that was like until 1997, it was illegal to be gay in my country. They will have the right to put you in jail. So my whole life, I was really scared to come out. Growing up in a religious household, I always believed like if I was gonna be who I really was, I was gonna end up burning on hell, getting punished. So I was always like trying to hide it and trying to just, isolate myself for a little until I kind of realized that the way to have a life and be happy or trying to find happiness was to get out of the country. So I find out that if I study hard, I probably could have like applied to travel abroad and get away and then probably like, be happy. So I moved here and obviously before I moved here, I was like arrested. I went out with some of my friends. We dressed up in girls' clothes, and then they arrested us because they said that we were disturbance in the public. We were they would treat us as we were doing something wrong. So they put us in jail, and they put us in general population jail, like with a bunch of criminals. And obviously we were hurt, and they really, it was a really hard experience for me. Like they molested us, they raped us. It was not something I want to remember. So I eventually decided that I need to get out. When I came to America, then obviously I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know if I could. I did not have the right to get asylum here. I didn't know like the authorities actually care for me. I didn't know who to run to. But eventually we find when we apply for asylum, and then it took 5 years for them to like actually give us 3 years, 4 years to give us an interview. And during that time, it was really hard because all you have is like a working permit, but that's it. You don't know, you don't have right to like get education, get like federal student loans, get all that kind of help. You don't have, all you have is the right to find a job. But if you don't know anybody, like it's really hard. It's not, okay, yeah, you have the right to find a job, but that's it. Like you cannot like continue your education, you cannot improve your life. And those are like, I would say those are like the rights of everybody. Everybody should have the right to do, to go to school, educate yourself, the right to get health. Transitioning isn't cheap, it's very expensive. So I didn't have the right to like get my medicines that I require every month. It wasn't I felt like I was hopeless during that time until we got called for an interview, and then I was able to talk to the immigration officers and tell them about my story. But yeah, I know.
Thank you for your courage and willingness to share your story with us. In case you couldn't tell, Mike here was actually Gabrielle's attorney. So, congratulations to Mike as well. You hear me? Yep. So congratulations to Mike as well for an amazing job in winning the asylum for Gabrielle. So at this point, we're going to open it up to Q&A. As I mentioned before, just please, again, be really sensitive and aware of the sensitivity of the topic and the confidential information that may be coming out. We do, however, also recognize that there may be individuals in the room who do want to also speak in their own voice rather than have me read a question from a note card. So if there's anyone who does want to speak in their own voice, then please let me know, and we'll bring a microphone to you. Just keep in mind that if you are a refugee or asylum seeker who would like to speak, be very careful if your case has not been adjudicated. So we're going to start with a really important question that I am sure is on everyone's mind, and then I'll try to go through the questions that I've received. After the initial question, if there is someone who would like to speak in their own voice, if you could raise your hand, and we'll bring a microphone to you as well. So the first question, which I think is so critical to this conversation, how can we help? How do we go from this room of individuals who've heard just the atrocities that are happening, the need for work to be done in this area? How can we make this into this global movement that I mentioned at the beginning? How can we help? So who would like to start? Joanna, actually, you have to go. You have to leave soon, so do you want to go first?
Okay. Well, listening to Gabrielle's story, the first thing that I thought of, and hearing her say, you know, I didn't know anyone, and all I had was a work permit. Show up and lend your expertise, lend your support. Come to spaces like Center on Halsted and be that person to say, hey, I know that you are in a situation where you may not have a lot, but I'm here for you. I think we tend to forget that that means a lot to folks who don't have anything, and we take advantage the privilege and power that we have. So if you have a lot of it, use it for good. Show up and let folks know, you know, hey, I know somebody who may be able to help you get a job, or I know somebody who may be able to help you still learn and get an education. It may not be formally, but we can still talk about finance and whatever else may be on your mind. So just, I think showing up for individuals in spaces is very important.
I would agree with that. To add to that is to understand this continuum that we have here. It really is a global issue, and understanding that people around the world are facing, you mentioned your family's from Nicaragua. It's a very dangerous place there. Rainbow Railroad works with people all over the world in very dangerous circumstances, where raising a rainbow flag, the simple act of raising a flag, will get you arrested, tortured, and sentenced to jail. And what you can do is to help people understand this continuum and that we all share this humanity, and go out and support organizations like the Center on Halsted, support Rainbow Railroad, follow us on Facebook, Twitter. This is one struggle that we all share.
So I'm going to put on a different hat as a board member of the National Immigrant Justice Center. And if you're somebody who speaks another language, there are interpreting needs, there's translation needs. But I want to speak to everyone in the room, and there's oftentimes housing needs on a temporary basis. So if you are interested in sharing a room or giving housing, clothes to somebody who has recently come to this country, you know, please speak to me, and I'll put you in touch with the people who then could help you, you know, do that, because there's a huge need. There are people who win their asylum cases who were detained, and when they win, they're out the door. That's it. And you're free to go, but you may not have anywhere to go. So there's always a bridge that needs to happen before any of those benefits kick in.
I would say that in my case, when I moved here, I just didn't know that much information. So I think if you know people, and if you can communicate them, and if you can tell them, like, listen, you're not alone, there's people out there that can help you. Like, we are a community. Like, you don't have money, but we are a community. We will take care of you. That will help a lot. And I think that that's something, like, everybody as human, as a community should do. To like to just communicate each other and share that this is a safe place and you can have a life here, you can be happy, you're welcome.
So as part of that question, I also actually want to speak about resources and make sure that if you do know someone who is an asylum seeker or a refugee, that you're aware of the resources. So obviously Rainbow Railroad is www.rainbowwelcome.org, which has online resources for LG. That's not. Oh, so not Rainbow Welcome. Okay. Rainbow, so actually maybe this is a different resource then. So rainbowrailroad.com and rainbowwelcome.org. So hopefully that is a different resource, and I apologize. Also, a plug for my organization. So as Mike mentioned, my organization, the Community Activism Law Alliance, which is www.cala, Chicago.org, provides, we have 19 programs that provides free legal services, particularly for immigrants, but also sex workers, day laborers, and grassroots activists. One of our programs is actually a helpline that any immigrant or refugee can call and be connected to either one of our free legal clinics or other programs that we're familiar with, which are free. I also want to mention the National Immigrant Justice Center, which Mike had previously mentioned. I think their website is www.nijc.org. Immigrantjustice.org, but it's National Immigrant Justice Center. And I'm sure Mike, you're still on the board, right? Yeah. So Mike is on the board, so can also provide additional information on it. I do want to read a comment which relates to this question of ways to help. 1, encourage your attorney friends to take on pro bono asylum cases. NIJC, which I just mentioned, runs trainings, and people need attorneys. So if you happen to be an attorney, please consider volunteering for an organization like NIJC or my organization, CALA. 2, volunteer with organizations providing services to immigrant. CALA. Oh, it says CALA on there. I didn't actually make that up. So, so volunteer with organizations providing services to immigrants. And you don't have to be a lawyer, because a lot of times what we need, our social service agencies need to have speakers of other languages. So if you speak other languages, or if you have even administrative skills, or just time, organizations that are nonprofits, anything can help us. So consider volunteering for nonprofit organizations that help asylum seekers and refugees. Give to organizations representing asylum seekers. That was number 3. And number 4, tell your friends the President and Attorney General control policy on immigrants. So voting counts. We've heard that from Representative Quigley, so that's definitely something.
So I don't want to get political, but I'm going to get political. It's true, the president and the executive handles the number of refugees yearly that can come into the United States. That's under the Refugee Act of 1980. For 2018, the cap was set at 45,000. That's for the whole entire year, for the whole entire world to come in. However, that's 45,000 is the cap. As of 10 months through the fiscal year, which is October 1st to September 30th. So we're in the first 10 months of the fiscal year, or last 2 months, however you want to look at it. Only 18,000 refugees have been accepted into the United States. The president for fiscal year 2019, which is going to be announced in September, and it will take effect in October, they're talking about going as low as 25,000 and maybe as low as 15,000 if Stephen Miller gets his way. So the executive is very powerful, and they are putting up walls in many different ways, not just at the southern border.
So next, I know that we have a speaker in the audience. Does that person have the microphone?
I'm so grateful to be here, and I want to really appreciate this space because really the struggles of asylum seekers and refugees is something that really needs to be shared. Like this event today, it's good that we're having this event because people really need to know, people need to be aware of what is happening, what asylum seekers are really going on. I, for one, is an asylum seeker, and I have a lot of asylum seeker brothers. So I know what they're going through, and I know what I'm going through. You get, so it is right that the stories are being shared so that people will understand and also to know. So there are a lot of different reasons why people decide to flee from their countries. You get, due to persecution and other aspects. I was persecuted several times in my country because of a law. There's a law, and I'm from Nigeria. There's a law that criminalized the gay men in Nigeria. So if you found having sex with a fellow man, you are going to jail for 14 years. And if your brother or maybe your friends know that you're gay or lesbian and refuse to report you to the law, the person is going to jail for 10 years for refusing to report you. Or maybe your family found out that you are gay, they refuse to report you, and the law found out you, they are going to jail for 10 years, then you going to jail for 14 years. And even organizations that provide services for the LGBTQ, so they are not even free, they're also going to jail for 10 years for providing services for these people. So a lot of people has been victimized, criminalized, beaten up because of this law. And in 2016, I was brutally beaten up in a place where I don't really like even know in part of Nigeria, because I went to visit a friend, and it happened that this so-called friend that I met online is really not who he posed to be. You get, so I got there. He set me up with his friends. I was beaten up. They kept me there for like a day. The next day, the whole crowd of the community, they gathered, and it was really terrible that I don't want to go through the details, because if I start speaking, going through details, I get emotional. But it was so devastating that like I managed to escape. Then in 2017, same incident happened to me in the place where I live, in the community where I live. I was publicly I was publicly beaten up with a friend. I was in a house with my friend, having sex, of course, and I didn't know that the community have already been targeting me, that they said, oh, this guy is gay because we've never seen him with a woman. You get, so that night I didn't know that they already planned for me. And I and my friend my door was broken, and crowd about 10 to 15 guys, they broke into my house and brought me and my friend out, started beating people. Like, crowd gathered saying all sort of things, homosexuals were going to kill them. And luckily again, I was able to escape that. So like, it has been traumas, escape, and which I believe God has been the one like making it possible for me to, because so many gay men, not just in Nigeria but Africa, have been killed because of their sexuality. In 2013, 2 gay men was beaten to death, burned to ashes in one city in Nigeria because they were found having sex. They were publicly beaten to death. Even the policemen were there watching the crowd beat them. The police couldn't even do anything. So it's not like you have maybe the law protecting you. Like, nobody, your family is against you, the law is against you, the society is against you. So you don't have anybody to even run to. Lot of gay men in Africa go through this a lot. Some people lose their lives, some lose their family, some being discriminated by family and friends. You get, so it was too much for me that even my family got to find out about my sexuality, because I was publicly humiliated, that my uncle had to tell my father, my family about it. And my dad said, okay, this is the end of it. I don't want to have anything to do with you because you are a disgrace to the family. So like, I lost my family, I lost my friends. I was excommunicated from the choir in my church, that, okay, you will no longer be singing with us because this is a disgrace. People can't see you sing in the church with what's happening to you. So, but luckily for me, before all this was happening, I already got a visa to come to the US for a conference. But then, how do I get the money to fund my trip? So as I was waiting, a few months after that, I lost my job because my boss found out that I got a visa. He was upset. Why would you apply for visa without consulting me? I'm like, I didn't know I was supposed to consult you before I apply for visa. So because of that, he laid me off. So I lost my job, I lost my family, I lost everything. How do I then raise money to travel? So then I also want to use this opportunity to thank Rainbow Railroad, because if not for them, I don't know if I would be here by now. So it was Rainbow Railroad that actually funded my trip to the US. And not just me, I know a couple of other guys that they have also helped out to get to safety. So I really want to appreciate Rainbow Railroad for the work that they're doing, and also to encourage us to support organizations like Rainbow Railroad that provide safety for LGBT asylum seekers. And again, not just getting out of the country, but also when you come to the country of safety, you also have other issues around it. Like one of the panelists said, you can't even get a job because you're in the US, but you are not allowed to work. When I was coming here, I was also detained by immigration from the airport. I was taken from the airport. They wanted to deport me because they said, okay, you said you're coming for a conference. Then they called the hotel, and the hotel told them that there's no conference that is happening in their hotel. They said, okay, that I'm lying to them. I don't have any reason why I'm coming here, but I have a visa. I have a 2-year visa that allows me to come to the country. They said, okay, they're going to deport me. I said, no, I don't want to go back because of my sexuality. Then I was put to detention for 2 months and 2 weeks. I was in detention. And then the experience in detention is another story that I don't want to go into details, because it's like people, asylum seekers go through a lot. You've been put in detention. I have a friend, a colleague that also came to the US. He was also detained for 6 months. He was in detention for 6 months, and he was able to get his asylum. I was in detention, almost being deported, but all thanks to my friends that was able to provide the documents that allowed immigration to release me from detention while I continue my asylum. Because for you to be able to release on parole, there are a lot of process you have to go through. You have to provide documents that prove that you are not risk to the community, that if they release you, you're not going to run away. You're going to appear to court, or if they deny you asylum, that you're going to come for a deportation. So you have to provide also document that shows that there are people who will be able to take care of you. Not just one document, but at least up to 3 to 4 people providing their tax return, all the documents showing that they will be able to take care. So if you don't know anybody, or if you don't have such connection, you'll be stuck in detention, or you'll be deported. You get. But luckily, I was able to speak to friends who were able to provide all those documents. About 3 friends, they provided all those documents that got me out of detention. Then now I'm out of detention. I have to continue through my asylum. I was out of job for 9 months. I wasn't working. You can imagine when you're coming from a country that is like, the temperature is like 90 every day. And then you get to another country that you have to, and again, when I was leaving, I didn't know about the jacket, winter jacket and all that. So even when I was in detention, the air condition, sometimes I would be playing with other inmates. Then I would have to bring out my jacket, my duvet to cover myself. People will be laughing at me. I'm like, yeah, because I'm not used to cold weather. Then getting here in Chicago, still the same thing. I have to like start looking for maybe friends or whoever to give me clothes to wear, because the one I came with is not working for the weather. So it's a lot of things, like you don't know anybody, you don't even know have resources. You have to be out. You have to wait until you are being able to grant work authorization. Because if you don't wait, if you decide to go and work without work authorization, and they find out, you are going on deportation. You get. So, and you can't even like share your stories, because if you sharing your stories, like you are fighting the government. And when stories are not being shared, people don't know what's going on. People don't know what's happening. So stories, people need to be able to share their stories to enlighten others. But the present administration make it difficult for asylum seekers to even talk about their stories, because then you are fighting the law, you are fighting the government. So is a lot of things. And then again, also getting a job, even when you're being granted a work permit, it's also very hard to get a job. If you don't have connection, If you don't know anybody, you won't get a job. I know while I was waiting for my work permit, I was volunteering with a lot of organizations. I was volunteering with Center on Hosted, Howard Brown, all the LGBT organizations that I know of. I was trying to just to keep myself busy and also to get connection just in case I get my work permit. But still, it wasn't easy. When I got my work permit, I applied with different organizations. One of the organizations, I'm not going to mention them, they say they can't employ me. After all the interviews, they conducted video interviews, and they say they can't employ me because I'm an immigrant. I'm like, so because of my immigration status, you can't employ me because you feel like we don't want to get involved with your immigration status. Even when I try to explain to them that me getting a job doesn't have anything, you guys don't have anything to do with my immigration. So you can't even get a job if you don't know, a good job, if you don't know anybody. You get a lot of asylum seekers end up doing a factory job, working in the factory and all that because they don't have such connection that allows them. Even lot of them were doing, like I have a friend, a colleague, he was a medical doctor, he's a medical doctor. We all work together back home. But he came here, he had to go through the whole process. Also when he got his asylum, he can't even get a good job. You can imagine somebody that is a medical doctor who studied abroad but still can't find a good job. So it's something that, so I'm glad for this space so that people get to know what asylum seekers going on.
And we thank you so much for sharing your experience. Your point about being able to share your story is really powerful, and I think we all really appreciate that you were willing to share your story. I think we have time for one. Actually, there were 3 questions that actually were addressed to you, Eduardo. So, if you could keep it brief, but could you please speak about how Rainbow Railroad actually operates? How do you do your work?
So Rainbow Railroad uses every legal means possible to get someone to safety. That's what we do. We will get in a year about 11 or 1,200 requests from countries all over the world. We answer each of those requests within about 48 hours, which is pretty extraordinary we're a very small organization. We respond to these requests, we document them, and we begin to have a relationship with a person who's seeking our assistance. As we work through getting to know them, we'll document the type of persecution that they're facing, if we're able to get proof and evidence so that when they do make a claim for asylum, that we have a file that can support them. And that's what we do. And we do it only because of community support. We have no government support. We rely exclusively on members of the community.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. So with that, we're going to end the sort of moderated portion of this evening. Before I pass it back to Bruce, I did want to mention that all of the panelists who are still here are actually available to talk to you individually after this moderated formal portion. So please feel free to come up and talk to the panelists or myself with any additional thoughts or questions that you may have. With that, can we please just give an amazing round of applause to our panelists. And an applause to everyone here who I hope is now part of our global movement. So thank you for coming. And then I pass it back to Bruce.
Thank you, Lam. And if you will all join me in thanking Lam for doing such a good job. Gabby, we have a friend here, David Sinsky from Heartland Human Services, who just wants to give you a little gift. Go ahead.
On behalf of the host committee, we thank you for sharing your story. We're very moved by it and just want to express our appreciation for you being here tonight. Thank you so much.
I am so grateful to all of you for being here. There's more of you than I thought would be here. So I also want to please join me in thanking the following sponsors: Rainbow Railroad, Center on Halsted, Windy City Times, the Chicago chapter of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and Heartland Human Services, all of whom supported this event tonight. So applause. And then there are a few other people I want to thank. I want to thank Tico Valle of the Center on Halsted, and Paul Helfin, the Director of Operations here, who helped. Andrew Hayes, who managed to get a lot of publicity for us, and I don't think he's here tonight, but he managed to do a great job for us. I also want to thank Sidetrack and Ann Sather for their contributions to the nibbles and drinks. And last but not least, to my partner in crime, who never says no to me, and one day she'll learn, Lori Cannon. So please applause for all of them. So we invite you to hang out for a while. There's still some refreshments, I hope, back there, a few things, and some conversation with all of us and with each other. We hope this is an opportunity to network, to ask more questions, to learn more, and learn how you can support the work of all the organizations that are here. If you're interested in signing up to help Rainbow Railroad, there's a sign-in sheet at the sign-in table. Thank you all for coming. Talk to you. Thank you.